Hi there! In this video, we will be showing you how to successfully install a thermoplastic EV bay marking. But firstly, here are some important things to consider. New tarmac will need at least 6 to 8 weeks to settle before installing new markings onto it. You should also never install directly over old markings. The new markings will only last as long as the old ones, so do feel free to ask us if you need advice on removals. Before we begin, make sure that your area is safe and barriered off, and that you have all the necessary materials, PPE, and equipment to hand. This includes safety gloves and boots, a broom, a scraper, chalk line, surface primer, a roller, tin snips, a propane torch, anti-slip glass bead, and the EV bay marking itself. You can find most of these items on our website. For step 1, you'll need to prepare the surface. Begin by cleaning the area where you will be installing the marking. This ensures that the EV bay will adhere properly to the surface. Use a stiff bristled broom to sweep away any dirt, moss or debris, and use a scraper to remove any loose or chipped pavement. If the area is particularly dirty, you may want to jet wash it first. In any case, you'll just need to make sure it's completely dry before installing the new marking. For step 2, you'll need to mark out the design. Use a string line and chalk to mark out the correct measurements provided on the specification sheet. Depending on the design, this is sometimes made easier with 2 people, but in this example we're going to show you how to do it with 1 person by putting a weight on the line. On to step 3, priming the area. It's important to note here that if the tarmac is less than a year old, you can skip this step. Preparation is key, so make sure your surface is dry to ensure a long-lasting finish. Using a quality surface primer and a roller, prime the area where the new marking is going and wait for it to dry. This usually takes around 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the time of year. Some things to look out for: if the primer looks chalky and hasn't dried clear, the surface isn't dry enough. In this case, you'll need to heat the surface and reprime. Next is step 4, positioning the marking. You'll need to lay the new marking on the ground, making sure it's in the right place. If you're also marking out the parking bay in thermoplastic line, follow your chalk line. At the end of each parking line, you can either cut the strip with a tin snip or snap the end. Once your marking is in place, you can move on to step 5, installation. Use your propane torch to heat the marking until it is molten to create a bond with the surface. Take extra care during this step, as if you heat the marking too much, it will burn. Similarly, if the marking isn't heated enough, it won't form a sufficient bond with the tarmac and the marking will fail. It's best to keep the tip of the torch at a distance of 20 to 30 centimeters from the marking, moving the heat back and forth until it is molten. Our top tip for telling if the marking has been heated enough is to look at the edges of the marking. You should see these start to roll out a couple of millimeters wider than it was originally. The top should also start to bubble, like cheese on toast. The thermoplastic material we supply has built-in anti-slip glass bead, and when melted to the surface, the bead sinks into the material, so it's slip-resistant throughout the duration of its lifespan. This takes us on to step 6. To ensure initial slip resistance, sprinkle your glass bead onto the marking around 20 to 30 seconds after you have finished heating it. This will vary throughout the year, but it's best to apply it while the material is still molten so that the glass sinks into the very top layer. Take care here. If you sprinkle it too quickly, the marking will be too hot and the glass will sink too far into the material, making it ineffective. Equally, if you wait too long to sprinkle it, the marking will have cooled too much and the glass bead will only sit on top, blowing away with the next gust of wind. This step should be repeated between heating each section of the marking. After installation, your EV bay marking will be ready to walk on in around 15 minutes, depending on the time of year. In some cases, you can drive on it in as little as 15 minutes, but we would recommend leaving it a couple of hours. If you need to speed up this process, on a particularly hot day, you can cool the marking by pouring water over it. And that's it! With these simple steps, you can successfully install a thermoplastic EV bay marking. Thanks for watching, and remember, if you have any questions or are unsure about any of these steps, just ask our expert team. we'll be happy to advise.